Following her funeral in 1997, Diana's body was brought to her ancestral home of Althorp.
Deep beneath the quiet canopy of Althorp Estate, Lady Diana's tomb has always stood as a place of mystery, memory, and unspoken emotion. But now, an unexpected announcement from the royal family has stirred a wave of disbelief across Britain and beyond. After decades of silence, officials have revealed new information that challenges long-held assumptions.
There were lots of things that the French police did that really are inexplicable.
About her final resting place and the decisions made in the aftermath of her tragic passing.
The princess, who spent her life in the relentless glare of the public eye, died in a speeding car in Paris, apparently trying to evade pursuing photographers.
So what exactly prompted this sudden disclosure, and why is it shaking so many people today? The whisper that shook the monarchy. It started most ordinarily through a simple digital statement quietly released by the Royal Communications team on a dull Tuesday morning. No fanfare, no interviews, not even a hint of urgency. Just a cold, formal message carrying the Buckingham Palace crest, looking like every other carefully worded update the public had grown used to. Many who stumbled upon it barely paused. They expected another routine notice about a royal engagement, a charity partnership, or maybe a logistical update about one of the estates. But hidden inside that plain announcement was a single line, subtle, restrained, almost whispered, that struck the monarchy like a sudden crack of lightning. It read, "Due to recent developments relating to Princess Diana's resting place, the royal household was now reviewing certain materials that could lead to a formal inquiry." Those words were calm on the surface, yet underneath them was a tremor, a signal that something buried long ago, emotionally and literally, was being disturbed again. More than 25 years have passed since the world stood frozen on August 31st, 1997, the day Diana's death reshaped modern history. Billions watched her funeral. Millions mourned in the streets. And still, even after decades, her story clings to the nation like a wound that never healed. So the moment that announcement dropped, people felt themselves pulled backward in time. The grief, the questions, the uneasy feeling that something never quite added up. And the timing only made it more unsettling. King Charles is currently battling cancer, facing the heaviest storm of his reign. Prince William is carrying new responsibilities that weigh heavily than ever. The monarchy itself is under a harsher spotlight than ever before. Yet, here, in the midst of all that pressure, surfaced a soft, careful sentence that cut straight through the calm like a blade. Speculation erupted immediately. What sudden information was so important that it forced the palace to reopen a subject many believed was sealed forever? Was this about new forensic discoveries? Political pressure? A sensitive document resurfacing? Or was it something more uncomfortable, something that brushed close to the darkest theories whispered since the night of the crash in Paris? To some, the decision felt like reopening an old wound, one that the public had tried, unsuccessfully, to let heal. To others, it reignited long-standing suspicions about what really happened in that tunnel, about the unanswered questions, about the strange gaps in official reports, and about the silence that followed for years. Whichever side people found themselves on, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary review. It felt like the beginning of something large, something unpredictable, something capable of shaking the very foundations of the modern monarchy. Yet, a single cryptic line in that announcement didn't just reopen old wounds. It hinted that something long concealed was finally forcing its way into the light. So, if the palace is preparing for a formal inquiry, what exactly have they discovered that demands immediate action? And why did it push King Charles to summon his sons to Althorp with such urgency? King Charles' private summons. The news didn't just travel through palace corridors. It tore through them like an unexpected storm, shaking even the most seasoned insiders before the public ever sensed a thing. Those closest to the royals say the chain reaction began with one man, King Charles III. And this time, he didn't hide behind tradition, protocol, or polished aids. He took the matter into his own hands. No scheduled briefings, no royal officials mediating, no guarded layers of protection. Charles personally reached out to both of his sons, one after the other, using a tone that insiders described as heavier than anything they had ever heard from him. He didn't ask, he summoned. Their presence was required at Althorp, Diana's resting place, without delay. Within 3 days, both brothers were on the move. Prince William, always the steady one, arrived first. His convoy slipped through the thick morning fog with military precision, elite security in front, palace lawyers behind, each face fixed and unreadable. His arrival wasn't announced, but the atmosphere shifted the second his car passed through the gates. Staff members whispered that they had never seen him look so tense, as though he already knew the gravity of what awaited him. Harry's journey, coming from across the Atlantic, took a bit longer. He touched down on a private jet hidden from the public eye, surrounded by his own security team and accompanied by a private legal advisor no one at the palace recognized. His return wasn't marked by fanfare, only by cold air, closed gates, and guarded silence. It was as if the estate itself braced for what was coming. No press, no cameras, no official acknowledgement. Just Althorp, quiet, isolated, and holding memories the brothers have spent years trying to bury. For nearly 7 hours the two sons remained inside the estate, behind doors that had witnessed decades of family pain and unresolved shadows. Present in that room were King Charles III and Earl Spencer, the man who knew Diana better than anyone left alive. What they discussed has not leaked. Not a single detailed whisper, only expressions. Because when the doors opened, something had clearly changed. A longtime staff member, stationed near the chapel entrance, murmured to a colleague that the princes emerged as if they had walked through something dark and unfinished. William's face was empty, drained of color, stripped of its usual control. Harry's jaw was locked so tightly it looked painful, his knuckles pale as his hand gripped the SUV door. Neither looked at the staff, who bowed respectfully as they passed. They moved like men carrying a truth too heavy to speak. From that day on, royal circles felt different, quieter, colder, more alert. Something had been found under the lake at Althorp, something that forced two estranged brothers to confront a past they thought they could outrun. And just when everyone thought the tension couldn't thicken any further, came the announcement that shook the crowd. What hidden truth could demand such urgency? Keep watching to find out. At exactly 4 p.m. GMT, the usually calm halls of Buckingham Palace shifted in a way that felt almost unnatural. The tall, gold-lined doors of the media wing slowly opened, and out walked Sir Malcolm Withers, the man known across the press world as the palace's most controlled and composed spokesperson. Yet, today, even he carried an uneasy stiffness in his shoulders, as if he were delivering words far heavier than protocol usually demanded. He stepped up to the podium, cleared his throat, and spoke with a voice that tried and failed to hide the strain. As part of our ongoing review of certain materials recently uncovered at Althorp Estate, his pause was brief, but it hit like thunder. We are formally announcing that discussions have begun regarding the potential temporary opening of the tomb of Diana, Princess of Wales. For a full second, no one moved. Reporters froze. Pens hovered. And then, as if on cue, a wave of shocked whispers surged through the room. Diana's tomb opened? After nearly 3 decades of undisturbed silence? This wasn't a normal press briefing. This was a tremor shaking the ground beneath the monarchy. Since that heartbreaking September day in 1997, when Diana was laid to rest on a quiet island surrounded by calm waters and tall trees, the idea of disturbing her burial site had been unthinkable. Sacred ground, a place protected from politics, gossip, and palace pressure. And now the royal family was acknowledging, publicly, that they were considering touching it. The questions came like a sudden storm. What exactly had been found at Althorp? Why was this happening now, after 27 long years? Was this about justice, legacy, or something far more complicated? The palace gave no further details, leaving the silence to grow louder, heavier, sharper. And into that silence slipped rumors, fast, fierce, and impossible to ignore. Some insiders whispered about hidden letters possibly sealed away near her resting place, letters that could change how the world remembers her final years. Others claimed an unfamiliar object had been discovered, something that didn't belong, something that seemed intentionally placed, almost like a secret message left for those who would someday dare to look. But the most explosive rumor was the one no one wanted to say aloud. DNA. Suddenly, the room felt colder. DNA verification meant questions, not gentle questions, but earth-shaking ones. Was this about lineage, heritage? Was someone trying to confirm, or challenge, something buried deep within the royal bloodline? And if so, why now? As the broadcast abruptly ended and the camera feed faded to black, one truth stood above all else. This was not a simple administrative update. It was a match struck in dry grass, sending sparks straight into the heart of the monarchy. And as the world searched desperately for answers, a chilling thread began to surface in every discussion. Then, the Paris connection resurfaced, bringing information that is bound to leave you stunned. For years, whispers about Princess Diana's death drifted along the edges of public conversation, soft enough to ignore, but persistent enough to never fully disappear. Then, without warning, those old embers burst into fresh flames. And just like that, the world found itself staring back at the same city that held the world hostage in sorrow nearly 3 decades ago: Paris. But this renewed interest had nothing to do with nostalgia or the emotional weight of 1997. Something far more unsettling was unfolding. A timeline once accepted as settled history was now being pulled apart piece by piece. Researchers, investigative reporters, online truth seekers, and ordinary citizens with a sharp eye began digging through every document, every blurry photo, every official choice made in the hours after the crash. And strangely, every trail led to the same cracks. Cracks that had always been there but were once easy to overlook. The French autopsy, for instance, suddenly came under a harsher light. For someone as internationally significant as Diana, the report was shockingly thin, missing details, failing to include expected tests, and raising new questions rather than answering old ones. Even more concerning was the quiet but stubborn refusal by French authorities to release the full medical records. Files that should have been transparent, given the global impact of her death, remained sealed, untouchable, hidden from public and professional scrutiny. Why? What could be so sensitive after all these years? But the detail that shook even hardened experts wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the treatment of her body. Within mere hours of the crash, Diana was embalmed, a stunning departure from both legal protocol and royal tradition. Embalming is known to alter tissue, blur forensic markers, and destroy critical clues that could prove or disprove countless theories. It is rarely done before a full post-mortem, especially not for a figure whose life was monitored and documented with unmatched precision. Yet this time, it was done quickly, quietly, irreversibly, No official explanation has ever satisfied the coroners, analysts, and royal experts who have studied this decision. It wasn't standard, it wasn't necessary, and according to some, it wasn't even lawful. In fact, many believe that the rushed embalming may have permanently erased answers the world deserved to know. Now, with serious talks emerging about the possibility of reopening Princess Diana's tomb for verification, the conversation has taken a darker, sharper turn. What once lived only in obscure forums and under-the-radar discussions has broken into mainstream awareness, forcing people to confront uncomfortable questions. Because when you place the facts side by side, the rapid embalming, the sealed French files, the unusual gaps in documentation, the delayed identification, and years of resistance toward deeper investigation, the impossible suddenly looks less like fiction and more like a puzzle with missing pieces. Then came the question that has shaken even the staunchest skeptics. What if it isn't actually Diana inside the tomb? A thought that sounds outrageous, insensitive, even grotesque, but it refuses to disappear. And in the quiet spaces between these resurfacing doubts, an even darker fear has taken shape. If it's not her, then where is she? Or worse, what else were we never told? Amid all this, rumors and theories are spreading like wildfire, fueling the belief that the palace may be hiding something. Let's uncover what secrets might be lurking behind the royal walls. The royal family's silence has never been so heavy, so suffocating. Every unanswered question becomes a whisper, and every whisper grows into a roar of speculation. In the case of Princess Diana, that silence has stretched into something almost unbearable. Behind the meticulously manicured lawns and the stately facades of Althorp, an unsettling question lingers. What truly lies beneath Diana's final resting place? Among the myriad theories, one has always carried more weight, more plausibility than the rest. The possible recovery of Diana's personal diary. For decades, rumors suggested that Diana maintained an intimate journal, a private account of her life that went far beyond the public narrative. Inside it, she reportedly recorded her struggles with the crown, the turmoil in her marriage, her observations on palace intrigue, and even chilling notes about her safety in the final months of her life. Insiders have long whispered that this diary vanished mysteriously in the days following her death. If it has resurfaced, and if it now rests hidden beneath her tomb, its revelations could shake the monarchy to its core. But the theories grow darker, more unsettling. Some suggest the presence of a second coffin beneath the one officially known to hold Diana, while some speculate it contains personal items, letters, jewelry, or gifts from her children. Others push the theory further, claiming it may hold decoys, secret records, or evidence so sensitive that it could never see the light of day. The most disturbing speculation of all? That Diana's actual remains may have been relocated years ago, leaving the tomb as little more than a symbolic monument, a perfect, tragic facade concealing a deeper truth. Supporters of these theories point to several anomalies in the original burial process. The unusually rapid embalming of her body, the lack of detailed photographic documentation, and the absence of transparency in how the remains were handled. Some even suggest the second coffin may have been added later, part of a covert operation no one was meant to uncover. It's a scenario that reads like fiction, but in the shadows of Althorp, fiction and fact often blur. Perhaps the most alarming pieces of evidence come not from whispers or rumors, but from science itself. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar reportedly reveal unusual anomalies beneath the memorial site. Insiders, familiar with the findings, have hinted at a sealed vault, one that appears to have been installed after 1997. If true, it would mean that someone returned to the site long after the official ceremonies had ended. The questions multiply. Who added the vault, and why? What secrets could demand such elaborate concealment? Yet, through it all, the monarchy remains a fortress of silence. No official statements, no confirmations, no denials. This unwavering secrecy has allowed the imagination of the public to run wild, conjuring fears, fascinations, and suspicions that stretch from the plausible to the utterly unimaginable. Every unanswered question, every hidden corner, and every mysterious act of concealment adds fuel to the fire. And the world, captivated and uneasy, cannot help but wonder what truths are being protected and what truths are being hidden. The stories, the speculation, and the subtle hints all point toward one chilling possibility. Beneath the calm exterior of the Althorp Estate lies more than a carefully tended memorial. Beneath the surface, buried in layers of history, secrecy, and perhaps deception, there may be a truth far darker than anyone imagined. A truth that challenges everything the public has been told about Diana's final hours, her legacy, and the monarchy's careful curation of her memory. This brings us to the controversies surrounding Princess Diana's burial, where the palace has faced accusations of secrecy and imbalance. Stay tuned as we dive deep and hear what the experts have to say about this shocking situation. A funeral, clouded by controversy. The morning after the world awoke to the news of Princess Diana's death, time itself seemed to pause.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident.
Across continents, candlelit vigils glimmered like fallen stars, their soft flames casting both grief and reverence into the night. People wept openly on live television. Children clutched newspaper clippings as if holding a fragment of her presence. News anchors struggled to maintain composure, their voices trembling under the weight of a tragedy that felt almost impossible to process. It wasn't just the passing of a princess, it was the loss of a symbol. A woman whose kindness, charm, and quiet rebellion against the rigid structures of royalty had made her humanity palpable to millions. But while the world mourned, the events that followed her death began to stir questions and whispers that remain unresolved even today. Tradition has long governed the burials of British royals. Members of the monarchy are interred with elaborate ceremonies in hallowed sites such as Westminster Abbey or St. George's Chapel, vaults steeped in centuries of ritual, history, and pageantry. Yet Diana, once married to the future king and mother of Britain's next heir, was granted no such ritual. Instead, she was laid to rest alone on a small, tree-draped island in the middle of the oval lake at Althorp, the Spencer family estate. The site was tranquil, picturesque even, but to some its isolation felt less like honor and more like exile. The public was barred from approaching the island. No tours, no guided visits, no physical access beyond the water's edge. The princess, so adored for her accessibility, now seemed intentionally out of reach. At the time, Charles Spencer, Diana's younger brother, spoke openly about the choice. "She deserves peace, not spectacle," he said during his televised eulogy, his voice wavering. "Somewhere she can finally be safe." Yet private tensions told a more complicated story. Recently declassified letters from 1997, obtained through a Freedom of Information request, reveal friction between palace aides and the Spencer family. The royal household reportedly favored a more traditional public burial, perhaps not Westminster Abbey, but somewhere visible and recognized, fitting her position. The Spencers resisted, citing Diana's troubled relationship with the institution and, perhaps, her own wishes. A diary entry, reportedly obtained from a close friend, added an even more haunting dimension. In it, Diana allegedly wrote months before her death, "If something happens to me, I don't want to be left in that place. I belong somewhere the people can find me." That place, it seems, was Althorp, but not without extraordinary measures. Motion-activated cameras, armed guards, and even underwater security patrolled the lake, blocking any unauthorized access to the island. Why such extreme secrecy for a woman who had walked among crowds, held hands without gloves, and comforted the sick and needy in defiance of royal protocol? The official explanation, privacy, dignity, preventing a media circus, has not fully satisfied observers. Even more troubling are inconsistencies surrounding the handling of Diana's remains. A confidential French report, quietly re-evaluated in 2017 but never publicly disclosed, documented irregularities in the timeline between the crash and her repatriation to Britain. Her body was transported with extraordinary speed, so much so that standard autopsy procedures were shortened or skipped. Toxicology samples were limited, and no independent forensic review occurred before her coffin was sealed under lead, a process that makes exhumation nearly impossible without damaging the remains. Why the rush? Some argue the answer lies in control, a tense balancing act between the monarchy, the media, and the Spencers' desire to shield Diana. Others suggest darker motives, secrets she may have held, plans she might have pursued, or knowledge that threatened powerful interests. Diana was no longer simply a royal. She had become a force of her own, loved by the public but increasingly seen as unpredictable, perhaps even dangerous by the firm. Her humanitarian work outside royal oversight, her closeness with Dodi Al-Fayed, and rumors of plans to move to the U.S. and redefine her life threatened the monarchy's ability to control her narrative. So, was Althorp truly a place of peace? Or was it a calculated distance, an effort to separate Diana from the legacy she was creating? The island holds her remains, yes, but it also holds secrets. And in those silent waters, perhaps that was precisely the point, to keep the truth just out of reach, where only whispers could dwell and questions could linger indefinitely. Now, the Spencer family finds itself in a tense dilemma. So how are they reacting to this shocking new development? Stay tuned to uncover their response. The Spencer family's tense situation. One voice has remained painfully, almost defiantly silent: Charles Spencer. As Diana's younger brother and the legal custodian of Althorp Estate, her childhood home and final resting place, his authority over the island at the center of the estate's ornamental lake is absolute. Any disturbance, let alone a potential opening of Diana's tomb, cannot move forward without his explicit consent. Yet publicly, Spencer has said nothing. No statements, no interviews, not even a hint to the press. Behind closed doors, however, a storm rages. Sources close to the family describe Charles as grappling with a decision that transcends law or tradition. It strikes at the very promise he made to his sister in death. A longtime family confidant likened his struggle to a moral crossroad of historic significance. On one side lies the growing call for transparency. Royal historians, legal experts, and segments of the public insist on clarity regarding Diana's death, her autopsy, and the condition of her final resting place. On the other side stands the sanctity of silence, a sacred, unbroken space that Charles vowed would remain untouched. A place Diana herself once confided was her only true home. The weight of the decision is personal. This is not about public curiosity or protocol. For Charles, it is about his sister, about the failure of the world to protect her while she lived. Hounded by paparazzi, betrayed by those closest to her, and stifled by an institution that never fully embraced her, Diana's life was one of conflict and compassion in equal measure. Her tomb, Charles believes, is the only place that truly belonged to her, a symbol of peace and safety. To open it now, he confided to a friend, would be to let the wolves back in. Inside the palace, tensions simmer differently. Prince William is reported to favor a controlled investigation. Privately, he has argued for accountability, insisting that truth, whatever it may reveal, must endure beyond rumors and speculation. She belonged to the people as much as she did to us, he has reminded advisers. Harry, however, is torn. Even across the Atlantic, removed from daily royal life, he fears that disturbing the tomb could desecrate, rather than honor, their mother's memory. "We lost her once already," he reportedly confided. "I don't know if I could survive losing her again." And then there is King Charles, the man whose life was irrevocably altered by Diana's presence, her influence, and her absence. For the first time in years, he has offered no guidance, no cryptic remark, no subtle acknowledgement in public appearances. To some, his silence is diplomatic. To others, it is cowardice. Meanwhile, the tomb itself remains untouched. Its ancient stones glisten in the early morning dew, serene yet heavy with history. But insiders reveal that the Royal Advisory Panel has set a 30-day window for an investigative committee to deliver its final recommendation. Within that time frame, every option, from non-invasive ground scans to a full exhumation, remains on the table. The countdown has begun. Outside Althorp, a quiet pilgrimage has taken shape. Mourners arrive by the dozen, some from nearby villages, others from continents away. They gather along the lake's perimeter, some even in small boats, their eyes fixed on the island that has held Diana for nearly 30 years. Candles flicker in the early light, reflecting on the still water. Signs are held high. Let her rest. Truth matters. Diana forever. A few stand in absolute silence, gazes locked on the island that holds not only a body, but the collective grief of a nation, a mother's love, and a mystery too deep to fade. "We never stopped loving her," one woman whispers through tears, "and we never stopped searching for the truth." Across the globe, media outlets brace for impact. From royal correspondents to TikTok investigators, everyone waits for the headline that could rewrite history. But one truth remains. Once that tomb opens, once the air inside meets the world outside, nothing will ever be the same. So, if the royal family finally opens Princess Diana's tomb, what do you think they'll find? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.